Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to campus. My name is Elijah Robles. I am the president of the Prelaw Society here at Saddleback College, and let me just say how thankful and happy I am to see people back on campus for the first time in quite some time. So thank you, everyone, for being here. Today, we are honored to welcome a speaker who is extremely well-versed in the legal and political field, and interview on his experiences in law school and his experiences professional political career, and we're very eager to hear what sort of advice and insight he can provide us as future leaders. Our speaker knows a thing or two about politics as he studied political science at Stanford, where he also served as student body president. After that, he went on to study law at Duke Law School before becoming environmental attorney. He then decided to run for Congress in 2018, and the rest is history. We're going to learn about that history today. So everyone, please give a warm welcome to today's speaker, Congressman Mike Levin.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thanks, Elijah.
Thank you, Congressman. Well, the first question we have for you is something that comes up in nearly every political interview, whether it be an internship, staff position, or just anything political. It's, what's your earliest recollection of politics, and how did you become invested in the subject?
Well, before I answer that, I just want to say thanks to you for putting this together, for everybody who is thinking about law as a career or public service as a career. I want to thank everybody here at Saddleback College as well, Dr. Stern and the trustees. Just a fantastic place here. Great to be back in this room. I know it's been a very difficult time for everybody. And I want to thank my team as well. Terry and Colton, thank you so much. So I grew up in South Orange County, actually not that far. First 8 years of my life were in Long Beach, and then we moved to South OC, I think in 1985, 1986. And I think my earliest political memories were of President Ronald Reagan. And I remember very well, back then in the 80s, it was the Reagan Revolution, and my parents were Democrats in South Orange County in the 1980s, so they kind of stood out a little bit. But we talked a lot about politics. I wouldn't say we were a political family per se. My dad was a hospital administrator. My mom was a toy designer, so she actually worked at Mattel for a lot of years. But growing up, I was always told that you have to care about civic affairs, you have to care about the world around you and try to make the world a better place. I remember when I got to high school, so actually what wound up happening, I was a Saddleback Valley Unified student. I went to La Madera Elementary and Serrano Junior High School in Lake Forest. Before it was called Lake Forest, by the way, or right around the time when it was incorporated as the city of Lake Forest. And then my dad took a job in Santa Monica, again as a hospital administrator, and I wound up going to high school in Los Angeles at a high school that was Jesuit, all boys, college prep, very different from what I had experienced before that. And the Jesuits have a ethic of service, of trying to do something bigger than your own self-interest. And I just gravitated over those years towards politics. You probably remember in 1992, or you weren't born in 1992, but you may have studied that President Clinton beat George H.W. Bush in 1992, and I found his campaign to be quite inspiring. And the first time I voted was in 1996 for President Clinton. I wound up getting to college in Northern California, and I got very, very active with the campus Democrats. I also got very active with the student government. So at the end of my sophomore year, I wound up running for president of the Associated Students and was really fortunate to win. And then in 2000, the Democratic National Convention was in the city of Los Angeles. And I knew the city very well and was really excited when through the Stanford Democrats, a Bay Area Congresswoman named Ellen Tauscher needed a driver in Los Angeles for the 2000 DNC. Thank goodness there was no Uber or Lyft because I'd have been out of a job. But her team asked, would you like to drive Congresswoman Tauscher around the convention? And I jumped at the chance, and I didn't have any passes for anything or any credentials for anything. And she said, just follow me around. Just follow me around. And so I did. And I wound up getting in most places. Some places were not so excited about it. But I wound up just sort of experiencing through the lens of a member of Congress what that was all about. And I worked very hard on the 2000 campaign. We lost by 538 votes in Florida, if you studied that. I then got to law school in North Carolina and told myself I'm not going to work on any political campaigns when I get there. Of course, that lasted about a week. I wound up, again, working for losing campaigns. There's a theme. You'll see a theme. Got back to Southern California, practiced law, environmental law, and got very active in the Democratic Party in Orange County. Worked on more losing campaigns. And finally, in 2008, Barack Obama became president. And that was just exhilarating and exciting. And really had been thrilled with that and involved pretty much ever since. My career has sort of been a balance between the law and environmental policy. Environmental law is really something that's been great. I think it's, with a law degree, there are a lot of different things you can do, but I think it's important you do something that you believe in, that you're passionate about, because it's a lot of time and a lot of money that you'll have to dedicate. But we'll get to that later, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. How about I'll stop there? Okay, I'll stop there.
All good. So you mentioned a number of political candidates that you worked for, but do you have any singular one that sort of is an idol that you looked up to in Congress? And this can be anyone. It could be a congressman, it could be a president, it could be a justice, you name it. Someone that inspires you to be better.
I'll give you three. I'll give you a member of Congress, a member of the Senate, and a president. The president is one I mentioned before, Barack Obama, for a couple reasons. One is because of the transformative nature of his presidency, but also the incredible campaign that he ran in 2008. I still think it's the gold standard for political campaigns, and I've tried to study and really learn from the grassroots activism and organizing that they did to win in 2008. And if you're interested in campaigns, I highly recommend any of the documentaries that were done about President Obama's 2008 campaign. The member of the Senate, I would say Bobby Kennedy. So particularly after the death of his brother, I think Bobby Kennedy really exemplified the best of public service. He was a person who'd come from incredible means and who was Attorney General and actually had staffed for Senator McCarthy, and really had a transformation himself when his brother was killed, and dedicated the rest of his service, both in the Senate and as a presidential candidate in 1968, to equity and to justice, and I think was way ahead of his time in many ways and was taken far too soon. But I've always looked up to him. And it was really, really cool that I got to serve with his grandson, Joe Kennedy, who's a good friend. And Joe and I went to school together, and it's still sort of surreal that I got to serve with Bobby Kennedy's grandson. And then the third, I also got to serve with John Lewis. And so John, for me, exemplifies everything that public service is all about. Again, putting others before yourself. He nearly died to protect and advance voting rights in Selma, Alabama on Bloody Sunday, and was just a great leader of the civil rights movement for decades, and just a wonderful, humble person. And getting to know him and befriend him was pretty surreal. And got to travel with him in Alabama and cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge with him before he passed away. Again, taken too soon. I know he's watching. I know he's not necessarily thrilled with the status of the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act right now. So I hope we can do right by him and serve his legacy. So those are three that I'd start with.
That's a wonderful story, Congressman. I'm sure it was surreal to meet one of the pioneers of the voting rights.
Absolutely.
For me, actually, I was very inquisitive as a young kid, and I tend to ask my parents a little too many questions, and they actually got upset at me a couple times. So I decided to ask the one person who I thought would have all the answers to everything. Of course, this person was none other than the president.
Yeah.
So I sent him a letter in the mail, And I knew, younger self, that my letter would rise to the top.
So Obama we're talking about?
Absolutely, President
You could have
Obama.
written Trump. I mean, I have no idea. You never know.
I knew that it was going to go to the top of his desk above all his duties, like running the country, that sort of thing. But to my pleasant surprise, he actually got back to me.
He answered, I think, 10 a day or something like
Yeah,
that.
it might have been his intern, like Keaton, but I'm going to tell myself it was actually him. So, and that's actually what got me into politics here, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm able to sit here today. So
That's great.
thank you for being here again and being an inspiration to all of us.
Well, Obama used to answer 10 letters a day personally. He would get thousands of letters, and his team would sift through them all, and then they would narrow it down to 10 a day. I do about maybe 10 a week, maybe. What do you think, Terry? Colton, they're kind of nodding. About 10 a week, because that's, we get a lot of letters too, but we try to answer as many of them personally as possible. But that's amazing. That's great. You better save that.
I do. It's in my room right now.
Excellent.
It's actually interesting. His concluding note was "Yes, we can," which, as you mentioned, was his primary slogan for his campaign. So switching gears real quick here, Congressman, we wanted to ask, or we know that law school is extremely difficult, as I'm sure you can certainly attest. So what's something you wish you would have known before attending law school? This is a question from someone in the crowd here named Iris.
Well, just be ready to work hard. And the experience that you have in college, enjoy it as much as you can, but just know that law school is very difficult. It is very challenging. And I got good advice before I started, which is try to treat it like a 9-to-5 job as much as you can, because you'll have classes in the morning and then they'll be over in the early afternoon usually, and you can go off and do whatever you want. You could go and, do very little studying, or you could do a lot. I'd recommend doing a lot. Had I to do it over again, I would have maybe played a little less intramural basketball, although that was fun, and maybe done a little bit less of the campaigning, although that was fun too, and maybe studied a little harder. But it all worked out, and it'll all work out for you as well. But if you can treat it like a 9-to-5, if you actually can sit in that library and study until the workday is done, you'll be a whole lot better off.
Wonderful. Well, now switching to your actual 9-to-5 now,
Yeah.
we wanted to ask you, how do you do it? California and the 49th district is very far from the District of
Very
Columbia.
well. That's the other thing. You
So
gotta have a support.
take us inside. What's the regular day like for
The regular
representatives?
days. So I'll give you a typical work week. How about that? Right. And just to preface this, I am on the road a lot. So I'm in DC about 130 days out of the year. But what that would look like is I'd wake up very early on a Monday morning, and I would try to get some exercise, knowing that I'd be stuck on a plane for several hours, and I would drive down to San Diego. Now you say, well, why am I doing that? Why not go to John Wayne? No direct flight out of John Wayne. So I have three options. I can either do John Wayne and then have a stop somewhere, or I can go down to San Diego, which in the morning takes about an hour, door to door, and then I have a direct flight to DC, or I could go up to LA. And yes, they're nodding. They're like, don't do that. So that's what I do. So I wake up early. I get down to San Diego Airport. I'm wheels up at around 8:30 in the morning. I land at around 4:30 in the afternoon. We're voting on the fly-in day at 6:30. So we always have something, usually not something all that significant, but just to get you there and to make sure that you are there. They hold some form of vote on that Monday at 6:30. If Monday's a holiday, then of course you do it on Tuesday. So then Tuesday and Wednesday are very, very busy. Those days fly by. They're 12 or 14-hour days. And then Thursday is the fly home day, fly back day. And so usually we leave at around 5 p.m. I'll get home at around 9 to 10 p.m. Friday is almost all official business. So whatever Terry needs, whatever our district office needs. We have two district offices, one in Dana Point that serves the Orange County community and one in Oceanside that serves the North County San Diego community. Our district goes all the way down to Del Mar and includes, in South Orange County includes Dana Point and all around San Juan Capistrano, Rancho Mission Viejo. You are in the 49th district right now, which I'm really excited about. Saturday is campaigning. right? It's a very, very busy day. We do house parties, we do town hall meetings, we do whatever events are, on the agenda are usually campaign related. And as you probably know, we have a very competitive campaign every 2 years, which means there's never a shortage of things to do. And then Sunday, if I can help it, is family day. Yesterday, or a couple days ago, it was Super Bowl Sunday. But that's the day to go out, hang out with the family, whatever we can do to sort of be, as close to normal as possible for one day. And then Monday comes and we do it all over again. There you go.
Wow, go Rams.
Go Rams.
So you mentioned it that our district runs all the way down from Del Mar up to roughly here, Mission Viejo. And so our coastlines and oceans are some of the most beautiful aspects of our district and even in the entire country.
Yep.
And we're very proud of that. And I can certainly attest that the beach is my happy place, whether I'm surfing, bodyboarding, or just running my toes through the sand. It's amazing. Very lucky to live here. Oil spills like we experienced in the fall are devastating to this natural environment that we just described, to our marine life, to our businesses, and we would like to know, what has Congress done to prevent these catastrophes and protect our district's beauty?
Well, it's really important to me, growing up in this region as well, that we protect our ocean, our beach, and there are both environmental reasons, but also economic ones. So obviously, we all choose to live near the beach, and we pay a premium to do it because we love our coast, and we want to protect it. Want to protect our air and our water, and make sure that the recreation can continue. Also, from an economic perspective, it's really, really important. We have about 140,000 jobs in the coastal tourism in our region, in Orange and San Diego counties. It's about $8 billion of economic activity a year. And so, it really does have a huge impact. For example, when the oil spill occurred and they had to shut down all those, think of all the restaurants, all the different coastal businesses, hotels, everybody down on the water, trying to have rentals for different kinds of things. Fishing, obviously, is huge as well. When all that shuts down, that is a really big economic loss to our region. And just the same, we have a rail line, you're probably familiar, that runs the length of our district, goes all the way down to San Diego, all the way up to LA. And in our district, it runs right along the ocean for the most part. And coastal erosion and bluff collapses are a big problem. So fairly recently, a few months back in San Clemente, you had a bluff collapse that caused a 3-week shutdown of the rail line. And that 3 weeks cost tens of millions of dollars in lost economic activity. Just 3 weeks. It's about $1 billion a year in economic impact. When you think of all the goods, you think of all the people that move along that rail line. So yes, we do it. We protect the environment with good policies, but we also are protecting our local economy. What I have done specifically, is my belief is that the only foolproof way we're really going to prevent additional oil spills on the Southern California coast is to stop drilling on the Southern California coast. And so we had introduced something called the American Oceans and Coasts Protection Act, and it included provisions that would ban any new drilling in federal waters off Southern California. We got that legislation into the House's Build Back Better Act. That was the big, broad bill that wound up passing the House and got stuck in the Senate, thanks to a couple of our friends in the Senate, who I won't name. But it was a very big deal to get that legislation through the House, because a lot of my colleagues from different states, from oil and gas producing states, they don't agree. They'd rather we drill everywhere. And obviously we have a different perspective because of where we live.
Absolutely. Well, that's wonderful to hear. We certainly don't want any more disasters happening off our coast that impact not only our businesses that you mentioned, the billions of dollars of revenue, but also our marine life and, of course, the beautiful sand and oceans.
Yep.
So switching gears now to another interest of yours, Saddleback College supports students from all walks of life, including many veterans and members of the military. And we wanted to ask, what actions have you taken to help our military community, and what's next for them, moving forward and getting back into the workforce?
Well, it's critically important to recognize that men and women that are serving in the military. Do we have anybody that served in the military here? No? Usually there's some hands that go up, and we're grateful for them. But they want to find another way to serve in the community. And a lot of that comes through whatever educational opportunities there are after their service in the military. So it's very important to me that we do all we can to provide them with great options where they can go out and they can learn skills that will help them in their career, whether it's a program in a trade, some particular vocational training, or whether it's just getting a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, whatever it is. And the GI Bill is a phenomenal program that's been around for a long time, but there's always room for improvement. And one area where we've tried to improve is we just passed legislation. I was really proud we got 68 Republicans and every Democrat to support this legislation. Getting 68 Republicans on board was not easy, but I think it was indicative of how important this legislation was. And what it says is if you are in the Guard or Reserve, you will also accrue GI Bill benefits the same as if you are in active duty, if you are serving side by side. So that's one example. I'm really proud that I chair the subcommittee for what's called Veterans Economic Opportunity, which has jurisdiction over veterans' education, housing, homelessness, transition assistance. It's some of the most rewarding work that we do. And I've been at it now for 3 years, and we've gotten 17 of our bipartisan bills into law in 3 years. So if you come to my office, you'll see a signed law with President Trump's signature, and you'll see another one next to it with President Biden's signature. And I'm really proud of the fact that it's a really bipartisan way to get things done. And the work we do for veterans is some of the most consequential, but some of the least reported, right? If you just heard on cable news, any cable news, I don't care which side or what their slant is, they're not talking enough about the work we're doing for veterans because it doesn't fit the narrative, right? It's not polarizing, divisive, controversial as much as some of the things they like to cover, but nonetheless really, really important for our community.
Wonderful. We're really happy to hear that we're taking care of our veterans here in the 49th District and that there's some spirit of bipartisanship, especially with those two bills that you mentioned in your office. So continuing with the theme of bipartisanship, we wanted to ask, how do you approach a bipartisan negotiation? It's a part of the legal career, obviously, but even more so in politics when you're going to try and bridge this political and very polarizing environment. So how do you do it to try and accomplish these agreements between two sides that have seemed very far apart in recent history?
Well, you try to meet people where they are, and you recognize you're not going to agree with everybody on everything, but there are areas of common ground that you can find with almost anyone. I say almost because not everybody. But I would just encourage as you move forward in your own careers, try to not just get your news from social media. Hopefully nobody here does that. Some of my colleagues do that, and it's not helpful because you'll recognize if you just go and you research any member of Congress, there's a whole lot of things they're working on that they're interested in. For virtually every member, this is true, and you can find things that you actually agree with, regardless of your political party, regardless of what you think your ideology is, and you'll find that some of the most conservative members and some of the most progressive members, when it comes to certain things, they actually see eye to eye. And that's, I think, reflective of the fact that the Congress is more nuanced and more complex than the simple media narrative portrays it. Again, if you only watch cable news or again, if you only get your news from Facebook, God help you, or TikTok or whatever, you're going to get a very distorted picture. What I also worry about is that too many of my colleagues on both sides of the political spectrum are more focused on how many Twitter followers they get or how many retweets they get or how many Facebook likes they get than they are about legislating, right? And if they actually want to legislate, that's why they're elected. They're not elected just to get Twitter likes, just to get a cable news contract when they're done. That's not what it's about. That's not why I got into it. So I worry about this, and I hope that if there are those of you, including you, that get into politics, I hope you're doing it because you actually want to serve. President Obama, he came and he met with all the freshmen when I first got in to Congress. And he told us, he looked around, and he looked at all of us, and he said, if you want to go to, or excuse me, if you want to be a celebrity, go to Hollywood. And then one of my colleagues asked, well, what's the most important thing, Mr. President, that you'd have to say to a freshman legislator? And he said, answer your mail. Answer your mail, right? Which he did for you. So there you go. But just the blocking and tackling, the day-to-day basics of actually doing the work, responding to constituent requests, making sure you're on top of the district in terms of what the needs and concerns are of your district. That's what the job is all about. That's what it's supposed to be about.
Absolutely. I think that's what makes our experiment we call democracy great. So thank you for responding to your mail as well. Appreciate it.
You got it, man. You got it.
So going forward with that, we wanted to ask, what are your top priorities you hope to accomplish in the 118th Congress?
In the 118th Congress.
That's the new one, right?
Well, first I got to get elected to the 118th
Oh,
Congress.
that might help.
That
So
one's
100
coming up.
117.
We're in 117 right now. So we have to get moving because, it's soon going to be the summer, and then the election's going to hit. And when the summer gets close, that's when silly season approaches. That's when people are spending more time on their campaigns than they are trying to govern. So we've got, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months of serious legislating that we can do here. I would like to think there's a lot we can get done. We just passed a couple bills that I think are very important in the House, and I hope that we can get them across the finish line in the Senate. One is to reform the U.S. Postal Service. So if we do nothing, the U.S. Postal Service will not be able to exist because of some fairly poor economic decisions that were made a number of years ago. I kind of like getting my mail. I don't know about you. So hopefully we'll be able to get that done in the Senate. Another will dramatically improve the current process for sexual assault or sexual harassment. Is there are a lot of companies that force arbitration, and that makes it very difficult for victims. And we just passed legislation that would dramatically improve that process for victims. And so I hope that gets across the line in the Senate. In addition, in the House, we passed something called the America Competes Act that will help the United States compete. Things like semiconductors, microchips, a lot of that now that used to be produced in the United States, used to be manufactured in the United States, is being manufactured abroad. And we need to get back to manufacturing here. And so the America Competes Act is directly an attempt for us to regain our competitive advantage as it pertains to other countries. And so that needs to become law as well. That'll help with the supply chain issues that we're seeing. There's no question that we have big problems with regard to our supply chain, with the cost of many goods, and a lot of that would be addressed if we were able to fix microchips. 1/3, according to our Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo, 1/3 of inflation in the United States is directly related to microchips, to the fact that there's a microchip shortage. And if we had domestic manufacturing of those microchips, we could reduce the supply chain problems and improve outlook on inflation.
Wonderful. Those are some bills that we'd love to see get across the line as well.
You bet.
So going to mention a couple other bills that got passed recently. Obviously, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, law. How does that and the potential Build Back Better Act affect Saddleback College and its community in particular?
Well, the two bills that we've gotten into law, I think both have pretty big impact, and I defer to Dr. Stern on the specifics around Saddleback. But first, the American Rescue Plan, right? And that was in the wake of COVID-19. First, we passed the CARES Act, and then we passed the American Rescue Plan. And both were designed, among other things, to make sure that great colleges like Saddleback could just make it through this unprecedented crisis where you had to do so many different things all at once. It was just a new normal for community colleges all across the country. And I know you did get funding under those bills. Then the bipartisan infrastructure law. So currently in the state of California, for example, we have a C- grade from the American Society of Civil Engineers with our roads, our bridges, our water systems. That's pretty bad. And so what can we do to actually be globally competitive and to get back to an A we have to invest. We have to make investments. And what the bipartisan infrastructure law will do is dedicate $1.2 trillion over time to our roads, our bridges, our water, our broadband. And here in our district, in our congressional district and in our region, it's really important that we do this, that we invest in transit, that we invest in roads and bridges. We've got a lot of, what I have done is I've gone all around our district and I've met with all of our mayors and our city managers and our city staff. I have 10 cities, and each city has different needs and concerns, but they all have challenges. They have challenges with roads, potholes. They have bridges that are in desperate need of repair. They have water systems that are in desperate need of repair. And this bill will help. This bill will help. And I hope that we get Build Back Better across the finish line, because that will be an even greater amount of help for schools, for healthcare, for childcare, for climate. We've got to do it all. And so I'm going to continue to advocate for whatever parts of Build Back Better we can get through the Senate. With a 50-50 in the Senate, it's very, very hard because of the filibuster. You need 60 in the Senate in order to get something done. And then if you want to get something done with 50, you can do it if it's directly related to revenue or to taxation through a process called reconciliation. But to get 50, you have to get Senator Manchin from West Virginia. You have to get Senator Sinema from Arizona. Every Democrat would have to agree, or you'd have to pull some Republicans along. And thus far, we have not been able to do that. Even though we got the Build Back Better Act done in the House, passed by, I think, 3 votes in the House, which was no easy feat. So hopefully we can get it done.
Yeah, I mean, that is obviously going to be a very high-stress situation in the halls of Congress, trying to negotiate those bills and get it through to the Senate with only 3-vote majority. That's very impressive. So, obviously, politics and law are very high-stress areas of practice.
It's easy. No.
Well, we wanted to ask if you had any tips or words of advice for future lawyers and politicians on how to handle this sort of stress, or even the schedule that you outlined earlier.
Well, I think one thing that would be helpful is go work if you can. If you know lawyers, if you have friends, family, people in the community that are lawyers, go see what they do, because you can do so many different things with a law degree. You can get involved in public interest law. You could go work for a big law firm. You could go work for a company. A lot of different things you could do. Make sure that you actually are going to enjoy what it is you're contemplating before you go to law school. And if you find that you go work around lawyers and you don't like any of that, you might want to reconsider 3 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars. I remember I was telling Terry on the way over here that when I graduated from law school, I had a mountain of debt, a mountain of law school loans. And so I went to work for a law firm in part because I wanted to pay those law school loans off. The good news for me was I really enjoyed the work I was doing. And I knew that, it was what I wanted to do. And I would just encourage you, try to get that exposure however you can. If you just want to get into politics, just get into politics. Right? I can save you 3 years and lots of money, and you'll still be really, really excellent if you want to get involved in campaigns or in public policy. You don't necessarily have to be a lawyer, and it's just it's a big commitment, as you know. But if it's something that you want to do, and you know lawyers and you generally like what they do, by all means, give it all you get, everything you have, and you're going to do great.
Awesome. Well, today we have the Prelaw Society here in attendance, and so we wanted to ask you, were you a part of any sort of organizations at undergrad, law school that were beneficial to your career, either in law or politics?
I don't even know if we had a Prelaw Society, but I was very active, as I mentioned, in our Stanford Democrats and in the Associated Students, and both of those were great. The student government was really a microcosm for real government. And, you had a student newspaper, you read about what they're going to write about you. You had all, kinds of competing student interests. You had all kinds of challenges. It was a very good, training ground for what eventually I'd wind up doing. And then get involved in campaigns. If you're interested in politics, just go work on a campaign. It doesn't have to be my campaign, be any campaign, because you really get that exposure, that understanding. And for me, I find it tremendously enjoyable and exciting to campaign. And you may not. Some people don't like it. And if that's the case, don't run for office if you don't like campaigning. I think trust your instincts. You'll know. So that schedule, the only way I know to get through that schedule is that I love the work I do and I see it making a positive difference. If that weren't the case, I'd never want to do that schedule, right? I wouldn't want to sacrifice. And Terry agrees, right? Because you have a crazy schedule too, and Colton does too. So if you don't enjoy what you're doing, then it will feel like a lot more hours that you're spending. When I was working at a law firm, I probably worked 70% of the time I do now, maybe, but it felt like just as many hours because I was always on the clock. I always had to, I had every tenth of an hour I had to account for what I was doing. I had to bill my time, and that grinds you down over years that you have to do that. With this job, I work more hours, but it usually doesn't feel like it, right?
Wonderful. Well, I'm sure we can apply that in our future endeavors. And on the same topic of education, today the cost of college in the United States is higher than ever.
Yep.
And for most of us community college students, student debt is a big concern of ours. So we wanted to ask, what would you like to see Congress do, and what would you support to help ease the financial burden on Americans for furthering their education?
Well, I think there's a couple big things that we're trying to do. One is to dramatically expand Pell Grants. So in the Build Back Better, I had hoped we would double the Pell Grant. They wound up increasing the Pell Grant, but not doubling it. So I think providing, obviously the funding necessary where people can afford to go to a school like this or to go to any school they want, if they're able to get in, we want to make sure they can go. And so anything we can do to address those costs is really important. Another is I co-sponsored legislation that would eliminate the interest on federal student loans completely. What I think is that if you are furthering yourself, learning skills, getting a degree, and you're using federally backed student loans, I've never liked the fact that the federal government was charging high interest, and to the extent that I think we could eliminate that interest, it is something that Congress could do. I know there are other very ambitious proposals out there. I'd like to see the administration follow through on some of what the president said on the trail when he talked about $10,000 of student loan debt. I know a lot of us are hoping that the president will follow up on those promises he made on the campaign trail.
Absolutely. So take a step back here. Do you have a favorite piece of legislation that you worked on?
Favorite piece of legislation? I think the one that I am focused on right now is one that we haven't gotten done yet, but one that I think is so critically important to this community. So we have San Onofre, we have nuclear waste, everybody knows about that. We have lots of nuclear waste right by the Pacific Ocean with 2 earthquake faults, 9 million people within 50 miles, and a major military base across the street. Bad idea, right? Bad idea. So one bill that we've been working on that we introduced in the last Congress, we reintroduced in this Congress, is called the Spent Fuel Prioritization Act. And what it says is when we have figured out where we are going to send the nation's nuclear waste, move the waste first from those areas that have the highest environmental risk, as defined by seismic risk, population density, and national security concerns. We finish first. And that's really important because the 20, 30, 40-year difference that legislation could make. In parallel, we are trying to find a permanent and an interim home for all of the nation's nuclear waste, right? The waste on our coast is the symptom. The bigger problem is we've got nowhere to send it. So that's another huge issue that we're working on. One of the reasons I love this bill so much is that we have just as many Republicans on the bill as Democrats. And it was co-led by myself. So I did it myself the last Congress. And, we got through committee hearing and we're hoping to get it in. And you really have to have bipartisan support to really get something like this across the finish line. And so this Congress, we introduced it with Darrell Issa. Now, you might remember when I was running for Congress, I was running against Darrell Issa, and then he wound up in the neighboring district. So that was a validation for me that this was the right strategy, and it's a bill that I'm really proud of.
Awesome. So there's a couple traditions in Congress that I can think of while I was interning for you that I found very interesting.
Okay, all right.
The
I don't
first-
know where this is going.
The first of those was the congressional baseball game.
Oh, yeah.
Which I got to watch part
Yeah,
of,
yeah.
and that was fun to see
Yeah.
our elected officials try and swing a bat. So that was very interesting.
Poorly.
Yes.
Yes.
Did you actually get to swing it? I
Didn't get to swing the bat, got to run.
Oh, very cool.
Pinch run. Stole 2 bases, and knees were sore for a week.
Awesome. Well, maybe next year you can get to swing it. And
I think that's going to happen.
I'd love to see you put it out in the infield too. So.
Me too. Well, I played out in the field.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they didn't hit it to me, but I was ready.
Yeah.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
The ball finds you. So
Yeah.
continuing with the idea of the ball finds you, do you have like a favorite or most memorable congressional activity? So like take the baseball
Sure.
game, for example. Maybe there's some that we don't know about. Something fun that you enjoy about the job that's not just signing bills and negotiating.
So the congressional baseball game is amazing, and you should definitely check it out. They actually broadcast it on Fox Sports, and it's in June. The next one, or no, July 28th. And I hope not to embarrass myself and our district at the congressional baseball game. But one thing that I love that we do in Congress that we have to get back to doing because we haven't with COVID, there is a series called the Congressional Dialogues. And what the Congressional Dialogues is, it's at the Library of Congress, which is a magnificent library. And they bring in historians once a month to talk about whatever new American history book they wrote. So you'll have Doris Kearns Goodwin, the great presidential historian, will come in and talk about whatever book. She just wrote one on leadership not that long ago. You'll have Douglas Brinkley come in and talk about JFK and the moon landing. You'll have John Meacham come in and talk about his new book, and you'll have so you get my point. And what they do, the Library of Congress has all of the artifacts from that period. So we had Walter Isaacson came in and he spoke about Leonardo da Vinci. And so they brought out all the historical stuff that they had on Leonardo da Vinci from that time, one time only. They don't show it to the public. And you get to go and you get to, they walk you through and you see all that history. And then you go and you hear the interview, and they also serve a good meal. And you also get to meet people from the other party that you otherwise wouldn't meet, and they sit you all together. So it's an amazing program, and I really look forward to it. And then with COVID, they stopped it, and so I hope that they keep it going and they continue it back up, hopefully next month or the following month.
Absolutely. That sounds like a lot of fun. And the first thing that it reminded me of when you spoke about that was not only how cool it was, but it reminded me of National Treasure.
Yeah,
Maybe
right.
It's a good thing that Nicolas Cage wasn't
Right.
there because we don't want any Da Vinci stuff leaving the Library of Congress. So the final thing we wanted to ask you in concluding this interview was, in reflecting on your experiences in college, law school, in Congress, what final words of wisdom can you offer both our educators, students, and administrators here what sort of advice could you offer us to be the best version of ourselves in the legal world, political world, and any other endeavors that we choose to go?
Well, thanks everybody for having me, for one. Really enjoyed this, Elijah. This was great. I think he's got a future in journalism, maybe. We'll see. I would say 2 things. One is trust your instincts and know that it'll all work out in the end. So trust your instincts, meaning, your path won't be exactly perfect. You'll go through things that you expect and other things you don't expect. You'll have setbacks along the way. You'll have good surprises and bad, but just trust your instincts that it'll all work out in the end. And then do what you're passionate about. Follow your passion. Again, if law is something you're passionate about, you're in the right room. But if not, no sweat. You're young enough where you can make many different decisions and have many different things that you're interested in. So it'll all work out in the end. I think that's the main thing. And just know that if you are interested in politics, there's no better advice that I got than from my old political science professor David Brady, where he said, because I went and I remember after class I was talking to him about his book on revolving gridlock in the Congress and all this different stuff. And finally he said, you got to go work on a campaign. What are you doing? Why are you, you shouldn't just be here talking to me. You should be out doing that. And that was just brilliant advice that he gave me. And I'll always be grateful for that. So that's my advice. How about that? Is that all right?
That's all right. Well,
Okay.
thank you again for being here today. I think one of the big moral of the stories was to get out and do the work.
Yep.
It's something that you do on the campaign, it's something you do in Congress, and it's something that I hope we can all start to carry on from this room and go out into the world and continue the political process to get young people engaged in politics.
Well, and just absolutely, it's so vitally important that you do stay engaged. Democracy takes your individual effort to work, and change takes time as well. Sometimes change is incremental. The progress isn't as fast as you want it to be. But so long as you're able to move the ball a little bit over and over and over again and stay engaged and know that ultimately the only way that anything improves is if you as individuals make it happen. That's both the challenge of our system and the beauty of our system is that it's designed so that one person can go and make a difference. So I would just encourage you to do it. Thanks, Elijah.
Well, thank you for making the difference and coming here today. We wanted, on behalf of the entire Saddleback College community, we want to thank you for coming out and speaking to us today. We really appreciate all of your time and helping to inspire us to be better. We hope to have you back here soon.
I'll be back.
Thank you again. Please
Thank
get up
you,
for Congressman
everybody.
Levin.
Thank you.